Imagine for a moment that the life you are living now is not unique, that somehow the events, the choices, the triumphs, and even the quiet failures have already happened before. Not in some distant memory or forgotten diary, but in a way that is difficult to articulate, as if the very pattern of your existence is looping, subtly shifting, yet fundamentally the same. This is not just an abstract thought experiment or a poetic metaphor. Across cultures, philosophies, and even in the quiet observations of modern science, there are whispers of a universe where life is not a single thread, but a tapestry that repeats, folds back on itself, and presents the same motifs in different arrangements. Consider for a moment the strange feeling of déjà vu, that sudden, fleeting certainty that a moment, a place, or even a conversation has been experienced before, though your mind insists it is new. It is more than a trick of memory. Some thinkers suggest it is a glimpse into a life you have already lived, a subtle echo from another iteration of yourself. The brain, with its intricate networks and unconscious patterns, may be catching fragments of a story you have already enacted, a story that repeats with slight variations. This idea is not entirely new. Philosophers like Nietzsche pondered the concept of eternal recurrence, the possibility that every event in life happens over and over again, infinitely. To imagine this is to confront both wonder and terror. Every moment, every decision, every joy, and every heartbreak you experience might already have existed countless times before, and yet there is no guarantee you will remember it consciously. Perhaps memory is the one thing that is intentionally obscured, preserving the freshness of each loop, even while the structure beneath remains constant. Science, too, offers subtle hints that repetition may be woven into the fabric of reality. Quantum physics, in particular, has unsettled our understanding of time. Experiments with particles show that events do not unfold in a strictly linear way. The same outcomes can appear across multiple pathways simultaneously. If at the smallest scales the universe does not behave linearly, could it be possible that life, in its complex entirety, is subject to similar patterns? Could the repetition you sense as déjà vu or recurring dreams be a reflection of these deeper rhythms? Even psychology offers clues. Humans are creatures of habit, and our lives are often composed of repeated routines. Yet, beyond mere habit, there is a deeper repetition. Some people notice that patterns in relationships, career paths, and personal struggles seem eerily similar across different phases of life. You might meet a series of people who trigger the same feelings in you, face recurring challenges in slightly different forms, or make choices that lead to outcomes that feel painfully familiar. Are these coincidences, or are they signs of something more profound? A life structure that is predisposed to recur, gently nudging you towards certain experiences until you fully confront them. Stories from various spiritual traditions suggest that this repetition is purposeful. In Hindu and Buddhist philosophy, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, samsara, is not merely myth, but a metaphor for an underlying principle, that consciousness returns to the world to learn, to grow, and sometimes to confront unresolved patterns. Each life is not entirely new, but a continuation, a chance to encounter the same lessons from different angles. The notion is unsettling not because it traps us, but because it challenges the very idea of linear progress. Perhaps life is not a line, but a spiral. Perhaps the past is never truly left behind. What if you were living the same life not in literal repetition, but in emotional or spiritual resonance? Imagine encountering the same types of challenges, the same themes, the same moral dilemmas, over and over again. The people around you might change, the city or country may shift, yet the essence of the experiences remains uncannily familiar. A career choice you agonize over may mirror a decision from decades ago. A heartbreak may echo an earlier sorrow. A fleeting moment of joy may recall a joy you cannot fully remember. There is a rhythm here, a resonance that connects different lifetimes, different identities, across the vast spectrum of time. Yet the most fascinating aspect is that these repetitions are not exact copies, they are variations. Like a melody played in different keys, the notes are similar, but the context shifts, creating an illusion of novelty while preserving the underlying pattern. This subtle difference may be why most people never notice that they're life loops. The variations make each experience feel distinct, even while the core structure remains constant. It is a cosmic dance of sameness and change, a delicate balance that keeps the mind believing it is moving forward, while the soul may be treading familiar ground. Stories of life review in near-death experiences hint at this repetition as well. Those who have glimpsed the boundary between life and death often describe a sense of seeing their existence not as a single, isolated timeline, but as a series of overlapping threads. Every choice, every action, every encounter flashes before the consciousness not once, but in multiple layers, sometimes simultaneously. The sensation is not one of judgment, but of recognition, of being reminded that the life you are living is part of a much larger continuum, one that may loop in ways ordinary perception cannot fully grasp. Memory, time, and identity are all deeply implicated in this phenomenon. What is a first experience really, if consciousness itself is capable of traversing countless similar versions of life? What does it mean to make a choice if that choice has already been made, perhaps in another version of existence, perhaps countless times? And yet, there is freedom within this repetition. Recognizing patterns allows you to act with awareness, to break cycles that may have unconsciously repeated for centuries. Awareness may be the tool that turns apparent fate into possibility, allowing the same story to be written differently this time. There are subtle signs we encounter daily. Certain places may evoke memories that are not our own, or dreams may carry the weight of events you have never consciously experienced. Music, smells, and colours can trigger inexplicable emotions, a sense of recognition without cause. These experiences could be fragments of previous iterations, whispers from lives that have overlapped with your current one. Perhaps these echoes are not mistakes of memory, but fragments of a pattern you are only beginning to notice. A pattern that is both intimate and cosmic, personal and universal. Some theorists propose that the universe itself is a kind of feedback loop. Time may not be strictly linear, it may fold in on itself, creating opportunities for life to replay, revise, and refine. In this view, history itself is not a sequence of unrelated events, but a web of repeating motifs from the rise and fall of civilizations to the personal arcs of individual lives. If the universe has a rhythm, a pulse, then it is conceivable that our consciousness rides that pulse, experiencing variations on a theme, living the same life from slightly different angles until the lessons inherent in each pattern are understood. The more you reflect on this possibility, the more you begin to see repetition everywhere. Patterns in relationships, cycles of success and failure, recurring fears and desires, all these may be traces of a deeper recurrence. Life is not simply a series of random events, but a structure that hints at something profoundly ordered beneath the surface. And while the thought of living the same life over and over may feel unsettling, it is also liberating. If life is repeating, there is always a chance to approach it differently, to recognize patterns before they repeat unconsciously, to act with awareness rather than mere instinct. We often measure life by its linear milestones: birth, adolescence, career, marriage, aging. But if repetition underlies existence, then these milestones are markers not just of time, but of cycles. They are points in a spiral rather than a straight line, and if this spiral stretches infinitely, then the familiar moments that bring both joy and pain are opportunities, again and again, to understand ourselves, to refine our actions, and to grasp the subtle rhythm of existence that flows beneath the surface of what we consider reality. To entertain the possibility of living the same life repeatedly is not to surrender to determinism, nor to believe that every action is meaningless. Instead, it is to recognize that life may have layers we do not fully perceive, that consciousness may traverse dimensions of time and experience that are hidden from everyday awareness. It is to glimpse the structure beneath existence, a rhythm of recurrence that shapes our lives in ways subtle, profound, and often unnoticed. As you consider these ideas, it is tempting to ask, if life repeats, how can I know what is real or what is truly new? The answer may lie not in proof, but in perception. Reality, in this framework, is less about chronology and more about awareness. The moments that feel familiar, the experiences that echo across time, are not mistakes. They are invitations to observe, to recognize, and perhaps to alter the course of the repeating pattern. Each life, even if it shares its essence with countless others, offers the possibility of understanding, of awareness, and of conscious choice. And so, the question that quietly hangs in the air is not whether life repeats. It is whether you are conscious of the patterns that may be shaping your experience. Every relationship, every decision, every emotion may carry a resonance from past iterations, subtle yet powerful. To live fully is to notice these echoes, to sense the rhythm beneath the surface, and to approach existence with curiosity, courage, and awareness. Life, in this view, is less a straight journey and more a dance within a repeating melody. And the more attuned you become to its variations, the more freedom you find within the apparent repetition. Even if you have never consciously thought about it, your life is filled with patterns. Some are obvious, like your morning routines, or the way certain people consistently enter your life. Others are subtler, woven into the emotional and psychological rhythms you experience. Perhaps you have noticed a recurring type of friendship or romance, one that seems familiar almost immediately, as if you have known this dynamic before. Or perhaps certain career challenges or moments of personal failure repeat themselves in slightly altered forms across the years. These repetitions are rarely exact. They are variations on a theme. Like an artist sketching the same figure from different angles, life presents similar scenarios in slightly new contexts. A boss who triggers the same frustration as one you had years ago. A friend whose behavior mirrors someone from your past. Or a series of challenges that feel strangely familiar. These are not coincidences. They are patterns, hints that your life may be tracing certain rhythms over and over again. The subtle variations give each experience the illusion of novelty, even while the core dynamic remains unchanged. Relationships are one of the most profound areas where repetition emerges. Many people find themselves drawn to the same types of partners, or confronted with the same emotional challenges time and again. A toxic friendship from years ago may echo in a new colleague. A heartbreak in adolescence may subtly replay in adulthood with different faces and circumstances. Psychologists often explain this through attachment styles and unconscious conditioning, but there is another possibility. These recurring experiences are not merely psychological. They are echoes of a pattern your consciousness has encountered before. Consider the feeling of instantly recognizing someone, not just by their face, but by the energy they emit, the way they speak, the subtle choices they make. This sensation can be unsettling because it carries an uncanny sense of familiarity. Some interpret this as the universe nudging you to resolve unresolved lessons, to recognize behaviors that you may have repeated across lifetimes or dimensions of experience. The people you meet, the emotions they trigger, and the decisions they provoke might not be entirely new. They could be variations of experiences your consciousness has navigated before. Careers and life paths often repeat as well. Perhaps you have felt stuck in jobs that do not satisfy you, only to encounter the same pattern later under a different title, in a different city, or with a different team. The feelings of frustration, ambition, or self-doubt arise in familiar ways, despite the differences in context. It is as if your life keeps presenting the same lessons until they are fully understood. Some of these repetitions may feel like cosmic nudges, opportunities to act differently, to recognize a pattern, and to break a cycle that has persisted beyond conscious memory. Even simple habits and decisions may be part of this repetition. The ways you respond to stress, the routines you unconsciously follow, the types of arguments or misunderstandings that arise in relationships. These may all reflect recurring life dynamics. You may have noticed yourself reacting to a situation in a way that seems instinctual, almost as if you have been there before. That instinct may not be purely biological. It may be shaped by a deeper continuity, a memory of experiences that your conscious mind cannot fully access. Dreams offer another window into these recurring patterns. Certain images, symbols, or scenarios appear repeatedly, often across months or even years. A dream of falling from a great height may not be a one-time warning. It could be a reflection of a recurring theme in your waking life, one that your mind is attempting to process. Dreams can act as a bridge between the conscious self and the deeper patterns that underlie your existence. They are a space where repetition can become visible, where subtle echoes of past iterations of your life may emerge. Even the mundane can carry this sense of repetition. Daily routines, encounters with strangers, and chance events may feel familiar in ways that defy explanation. You may pass someone on the street and feel a fleeting sense of déjà vu, or stumble upon a place that evokes memories you cannot place. These moments, often dismissed as quirks of perception, may be fragments of a recurring structure, subtle indicators that life is presenting the same motifs in different guises. Yet repetition is not inherently negative. Patterns exist to be recognized, to be understood, and ultimately to be transcended. Each recurrence presents an opportunity to act with awareness, to notice behaviors, emotions, or decisions that have repeated unconsciously. By observing these patterns, you can begin to make conscious choices that alter the course of your life, even within the broader rhythm that seems to loop. Awareness is the tool that allows you to move beyond repetition, to reshape the familiar into something new, and to gain insight into the deeper currents guiding your existence. Interestingly, some of these patterns may involve moral or ethical lessons. Life seems to offer the same challenges repeatedly, inviting you to respond differently each time. For example, a relationship may repeatedly test your capacity for patience, forgiveness, or honesty. A career path may repeatedly challenge your courage, creativity, or integrity. These patterns are not punishments. They are structured opportunities for growth. If life truly repeats, it may do so to allow consciousness to evolve, to confront and understand the lessons that remain unresolved, and to refine the way we navigate existence. This repetition extends to our internal landscape as well. Emotional responses, fears, and desires often recur in ways that feel deeply familiar. You may notice patterns in how you handle disappointment, joy, or grief. Certain anxieties may appear repeatedly, triggered by different circumstances but echoing a similar emotional theme. Understanding these patterns can feel like peeling back layers of your consciousness, revealing the rhythms that shape your inner life. In this sense, repetition is a mirror. It reflects not just the external circumstances, but the persistent tendencies of the mind and soul. Even significant life events, loss, illness, triumph, and failure, may be part of these repeating structures. Some people report uncanny similarities between events in different stages of life, from childhood to adulthood. These repetitions are rarely exact. Instead, they are variations that highlight the essential lesson or experience being presented. Life seems to be designed in a way that ensures the lessons inherent in certain experiences are encountered multiple times, giving consciousness multiple opportunities to fully grasp their significance. Stories from spiritual traditions support this observation. In Buddhism, the concept of karma suggests that actions and consequences extend beyond a single lifetime, creating patterns that recur until they are understood and resolved. Hindu philosophy describes cycles of rebirth where the soul returns to confront unresolved lessons. Even Western mystical traditions hint at the repetition of certain experiences as a way of refining the soul. Across these perspectives, repetition is not accidental. It is purposeful, a mechanism for consciousness to evolve, refine, and ultimately transcend. Some people experience repetition in a way that borders on the uncanny. They notice that certain life circumstances seem to follow them, appearing in slightly different forms in different phases of life. Places, events, and people evoke intense familiarity, even when logically they should be new. These experiences may be dismissed as coincidence, but for those who are attuned, they hint at a deeper pattern. There is a structure to existence, subtle and pervasive, that repeats experiences to offer insight and growth. Recognizing these patterns can be both unsettling and enlightening, opening a window into the hidden rhythms of life. The recognition of repetition also invites self-reflection. When a pattern becomes visible, whether in relationships, career, or emotional response, there is a choice to act consciously rather than unconsciously. You may recognize that certain behaviors lead to familiar outcomes and choose to respond differently, breaking the cycle. In this way, awareness is not just observation, it is transformation. Repetition is not fate, it is a framework, and within it lies the potential for choice, growth, and freedom. Even ordinary coincidences may carry the imprint of these recurring patterns. Meeting someone unexpectedly, hearing a phrase that resonates with past experience, or encountering events that feel predestined may all be manifestations of repetition. Life appears to fold in on itself in subtle ways, creating echoes of previous experiences. The challenge is to notice these echoes, to understand the underlying pattern, and to use that understanding to navigate life with awareness rather than unconscious repetition. In some cases, repetition is tied to unresolved questions or unfulfilled desires. A particular dream, goal, or longing may recur because it has not yet been fully explored or expressed. Life may continue to present variations on the same theme until the lesson is grasped, the desire acknowledged, or the choice fully realized. The repetition is not a trap, it is an invitation. It is a chance to approach familiar experiences with new insight, to act differently, and to engage more consciously with the rhythm of existence. Ultimately, the patterns that emerge in your life are a reflection of both external circumstances and internal consciousness. Life is not a random series of events. It is structured, patterned, and in many ways designed to recur. The same types of challenges, relationships, and decisions appear repeatedly, not to punish or confuse, but to provide opportunities for growth, insight, and conscious choice. By observing these patterns, by paying attention to the familiar echoes that appear in both mundane and extraordinary experiences, you can begin to see the subtle architecture of your existence. Repetition, then, is a guide, a teacher, and a mirror. It invites awareness, reflection, and conscious action. It reveals the structure beneath the surface of your experiences, connecting moments across time and circumstance. And while it can feel unsettling to consider that your life may contain recurring patterns, it is also profoundly liberating. Awareness of these rhythms gives you the ability to act intentionally, to reshape familiar experiences, and to approach each moment with insight, curiosity, and presence. The more you attune yourself to these repetitions, the more you begin to see life as a dance of familiar patterns and subtle variations. Every encounter, every choice, every fleeting emotion carries the potential to reveal an echo of a previous experience. And yet, within this repetition lies the possibility of transformation, the chance to act differently, to break cycles, and to engage consciously with the unfolding story of your life. Recognizing these patterns is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is an invitation to inhabit life more fully, to navigate familiar rhythms with awareness, and to glimpse the hidden architecture that shapes your existence. What is it, exactly, that causes life to repeat itself? Is it fate, destiny, or something even more subtle? An echo of consciousness itself, reaching across time and space? The patterns you encounter, the recurring relationships, challenges, and emotional loops may not be random. They may be the reflection of an underlying structure, a hidden order that governs existence in ways ordinary perception cannot fully grasp. One way to think about this is through the lens of consciousness. Our minds are not simply passive observers of life, they are active participants, shaping experience through perception, expectation, and memory. Consciousness may carry more than just the awareness of the present moment. It may preserve traces of experience that extend beyond what we normally consider this life. These traces can surface in dreams, in intuition, or in sudden, inexplicable feelings of familiarity. In other words, the patterns we recognize in our lives may be the result of consciousness itself interacting with reality across multiple layers or iterations of experience. Consider memory, not as we usually understand it, but in a broader sense. What if memory is not strictly linear, confined to a single life or even a single brain? Some theories suggest that consciousness stores experiences in ways that are not limited by the temporal flow we assume. Echoes of past decisions, past emotions, and past interactions may be embedded in the subtle patterns of perception, influencing the choices we make and the situations we encounter. This could explain why certain scenarios feel strangely familiar, why specific emotions or dilemmas repeat, and why life often presents the same lessons in different forms. Quantum physics offers another intriguing perspective. Experiments with particles suggest that events at the smallest scales do not unfold in a strictly linear, deterministic way. Instead, multiple possibilities coexist until observation collapses them into a single outcome. If the universe at its core is probabilistic rather than fixed, it may allow for multiple iterations of reality to exist simultaneously or in overlapping sequences. Life may be participating in a similar process, where patterns recur across different possibilities, giving rise to experiences that feel both new and familiar at the same time. Some scientists and theorists have proposed that consciousness itself may not be confined to a single body or timeline. If consciousness is a fundamental property of the universe, rather than a byproduct of the brain, it could traverse multiple versions of existence, experiencing variations of life repeatedly. Each iteration would present similar challenges, relationships, and decisions, but the variations would make each experience feel distinct. From this perspective, repetition is not accidental. It is the natural consequence of consciousness exploring and interacting with reality across multiple layers. Even classical psychology hints at mechanisms for repeating life patterns. The mind forms habits, expectations, and unconscious scripts early in life, and these can perpetuate similar experiences indefinitely. However, the repetition we are exploring goes beyond habit. It extends into relationships, careers, and life events that appear over and over, in forms too complex to be explained by simple conditioning. This suggests that the repetition is not merely psychological, it may be structural, woven into the very fabric of existence, shaped by forces that transcend ordinary understanding. There is also the concept of resonance. Certain experiences, emotions, or choices may carry vibrational qualities that resonate across time and circumstance. When life presents similar situations repeatedly, it may be because your consciousness is drawn to them, responding to these resonances. You might find yourself repeatedly drawn to the same types of people, careers, or life challenges because they are vibrating at the same frequency as unresolved aspects of your being. Recognizing these resonances can help you act consciously, break cycles, and respond in ways that bring resolution rather than repetition. Some theories even suggest that reality itself may be cyclical. Time may not be a straight line, but a loop, or even a series of nested loops, where events recur in patterns that are invisible to linear perception. In such a framework, life would naturally repeat, not because of fate, but because the structure of time and existence allows for cycles. These cycles could be immense, spanning centuries or millennia, or subtle, manifesting in the recurring dynamics of a single person's relationships or choices. The patterns you see are then echoes of a larger rhythm that underlies all reality. Memory, consciousness, and time may interact in ways that create a kind of feedback loop. Your consciousness experiences events, encodes them, and then, through mechanisms we do not fully understand, influences the presentation of similar events in the future. This creates a pattern, the familiar recurrence of certain dynamics, emotions, or decisions. Some describe this as a form of karmic memory, others as a quantum echo, and still others as a structural property of consciousness itself. Regardless of the terminology, the effect is the same. Life repeats, not always exactly, but with enough similarity to make the repetitions noticeable. Even neurological studies provide hints. The brain constantly seeks patterns, connecting past experience to present input in order to predict outcomes. This pattern-seeking behavior can amplify the perception of repetition, making familiar dynamics more salient than they might otherwise appear. But beyond neurological pattern recognition, there may be something more profound. The repetition of experience may be embedded in consciousness itself, a structural property of existence that our brains detect and respond to intuitively. Some philosophers argue that repetition serves as a teacher. By presenting similar experiences repeatedly, life encourages reflection, learning, and growth. You are given multiple opportunities to act differently, to respond consciously, and to develop insight into recurring patterns. This is why some relationships, careers, or life challenges appear over and over. They are not punishments, but structured invitations to evolve. Recognizing this allows repetition to be reframed, not as a trap, but as an essential part of the process of consciousness learning about itself. This perspective also reframes the notion of fate. If patterns recur because consciousness and reality interact in structured ways, fate is not a rigid path, but a set of recurring opportunities. Each repetition allows choice, insight, and transformation. The lesson may be the same, but your response can be different. Awareness is the key. The more conscious you become of the patterns, the more power you have to navigate them, to break cycles, and to engage with life intentionally rather than unconsciously. Some suggest that dreams are a particularly clear window into these mechanisms. In dreams, consciousness can explore scenarios and relationships that resemble real-life patterns. Recurring dreams, especially, may indicate unresolved dynamics, emotional loops, or lessons that the mind has yet to fully integrate. Through these nocturnal experiences, consciousness rehearses, reflects, and processes repetition in a safe and symbolic space. Dreams are a laboratory for understanding the cycles that appear in waking life, offering insight into the deeper architecture of experience. Even intuition may be a signal of these deeper mechanisms. The inexplicable sense that something is familiar or supposed to happen may be a subtle recognition of recurring patterns. This intuition is not random. It is consciousness sensing echoes of prior experience. By paying attention to these moments, you can navigate life with more awareness, making choices that acknowledge repetition and potentially alter the course of the familiar loops. Across spiritual and philosophical traditions, repetition is recognized as a fundamental aspect of existence. Karma, samsara, eternal recurrence, and cycles of rebirth all point to the same insight. Life presents recurring experiences to foster learning, growth, and conscious evolution. Whether approached through philosophy, spirituality, or modern science, the evidence suggests that repetition is not merely a metaphor. It is an essential feature of consciousness interacting with reality. If we accept this, then repetition is not a limitation, but a guide. It allows us to identify unresolved dynamics, to confront recurring challenges, and to gain mastery over patterns that might otherwise repeat indefinitely. Conscious awareness becomes the tool through which repetition transforms from a source of frustration into an instrument of understanding. Recognizing the mechanisms behind life's loops is the first step toward engaging with them intentionally, and toward discovering the freedom that lies within apparent inevitability. The universe may be structured in ways that allow for recurrence, not to trap us, but to teach us. Consciousness may preserve traces of experience, creating subtle echoes that influence the presentation of life events. Time may be cyclical, folding back on itself in patterns we cannot always perceive. And yet, within these cycles, there is freedom. The freedom to recognize the repetition, to respond consciously, and to shape the course of life with awareness rather than mere habit. In this framework, repetition is a mirror, reflecting both the structure of the universe and the dynamics of consciousness. It shows us where we have been, what we have learned, and where growth is still possible. It invites awareness, insight, and transformation. The recurring patterns of life, relationships, career paths, emotional responses, and even dreams, are not accidents. They are the language of existence, written in a code that consciousness can decipher. Ultimately, the mechanisms behind repeating life patterns may be complex and multi-layered, involving consciousness, memory, time, and quantum structures. But the effect is clear. Life presents familiar experiences, challenges, and dynamics repeatedly, inviting awareness, choice, and growth. Recognizing these mechanisms allows us to navigate repetition consciously, to act with insight, and to discover the profound lessons hidden within the recurring motifs of existence. The deeper you look, the more you begin to see that life's repetitions are not random. They are intentional, subtle, and instructive. They are the echoes of consciousness, the cycles of reality, and the reflections of universal structure. And while their mechanisms may remain partially hidden, their presence is undeniable. Life has a rhythm, a pattern, and a loop, and by attuning to it, you can begin to move within it with awareness, understanding, and freedom. If repetition is built into the fabric of existence, then the first step toward understanding it is noticing it in your own life. Many patterns are subtle, almost invisible until attention is paid. Perhaps you have felt drawn to the same types of people repeatedly, or encountered similar conflicts in relationships that mirror past struggles. Perhaps opportunities and challenges have a familiar rhythm, arriving in cycles that feel uncannily aligned with past experiences. These are not mere coincidences, they are echoes of the patterns that shape your life. Awareness is the tool that allows you to interact consciously with these patterns. Without awareness, repetition can feel like fate, something external and uncontrollable. But when you begin to notice, you gain insight. For example, you might recognize a recurring conflict with authority figures. At first, it seems like different people in different circumstances, but the emotional resonance, the frustration, the fear, the response, is almost identical. Recognizing this repetition allows you to step back, to observe your own reactions and to make choices that could alter the cycle. Relationships offer particularly clear lessons. Many people report meeting someone and experiencing an immediate, inexplicable familiarity. Sometimes it is warm and comforting. Other times it triggers tension or discomfort. These reactions are often clues, indications that the patterns you are encountering have occurred before in some form. By observing the dynamics rather than immediately reacting, you begin to see the underlying structure. Perhaps you are drawn to people who reflect unresolved issues from earlier experiences, or perhaps conflicts arise because certain emotional triggers have yet to be understood. Awareness opens the door to conscious response rather than unconscious repetition. Career and personal ambitions also reveal repeating structures. A challenge that once blocked your progress may return in a new context. A project that ended in failure may present itself again, under slightly altered circumstances, until you approach it with new insight. Observing these patterns helps you recognize where growth is possible and where habitual responses may be limiting you. Repetition, in this sense, is less about punishment and more about opportunity. It offers multiple chances to act differently, to integrate past lessons, and to move forward with intention. Even seemingly trivial experiences can carry meaningful repetition. Have you noticed the same themes appearing in dreams? Certain symbols, scenarios, or emotions may surface repeatedly, reflecting patterns in your waking life. Dreams may dramatize recurring themes, offering insight into unresolved dynamics or habitual responses. For example, you might dream of being trapped in a familiar place or encountering a figure whose behavior echoes someone in your daily life. These dreams are not random. They are consciousness highlighting patterns, inviting you to notice and reflect. Patterns are also evident in emotional responses. Certain fears, anxieties, or joys tend to recur, even in different contexts. A particular form of disappointment may trigger the same sadness across years. A certain type of joy, connection, creativity, or recognition may resurface repeatedly in different situations. These emotional repetitions reveal the internal structures of your consciousness, the tendencies that shape how you perceive and respond to life. By observing these patterns, you gain the ability to respond consciously, to shift habitual reactions, and to transform recurring emotional loops. Awareness of repetition can begin subtly. Start by observing your own reactions. Notice moments of déjà vu, uncanny familiarity, or emotional resonance. Reflect on relationships, career experiences, and personal challenges. Ask yourself, have I encountered this before in some form? Am I responding habitually or with conscious choice? Even simple journaling can help, revealing patterns that may otherwise remain invisible. Awareness is not passive, it is the first step toward conscious engagement with the cycles of life. The process of noticing repetition often requires honesty. It is tempting to dismiss familiar patterns as coincidence or bad luck. Yet by acknowledging the similarities, you gain clarity. Perhaps you see that certain types of conflicts arise in relationships repeatedly because of unresolved emotional dynamics within yourself. Perhaps you notice that the same professional challenges recur because of habitual approaches or assumptions. Recognition is empowering. It allows you to see where intervention is possible and where awareness can break the unconscious cycle. Awareness also illuminates the connection between internal and external patterns. Many recurring life events reflect not only external circumstances, but also internal states, beliefs, fears, desires, and expectations. For instance, if you repeatedly encounter conflicts in communication, it may not be entirely about the people involved. It may reflect an unconscious pattern in how you express yourself or respond to others. By observing both the internal tendencies and the external dynamics, you gain a holistic understanding of the repetition. This awareness is the foundation for change. Transforming repetition does not mean erasing the past or controlling the future. Rather, it is about conscious engagement. Once a pattern is recognized, you can experiment with different responses. If a certain type of conflict arises, you might respond with patience instead of frustration. If a familiar emotional trigger emerges, you might pause to reflect, rather than react instinctively. By consciously altering your responses, the repeating pattern begins to shift. What once seemed inevitable can become malleable, revealing the creative potential hidden within repetition. Interestingly, even failure can be instructive. Repeated challenges often appear not to punish, but to provide insight into choices, priorities, and behaviors. Perhaps a project fails because it is teaching patience or humility. Perhaps a relationship ends repeatedly because it is highlighting unresolved patterns of attachment. Recognizing these lessons transforms repetition from frustration into guidance. Life presents the familiar not to trap you, but to offer opportunities for awareness, reflection, and growth. Some patterns extend beyond the personal into cultural or societal levels. Many people notice that human history itself repeats. Wars, conflicts, revolutions, and cycles of prosperity and decline. On a personal level, these larger rhythms can mirror your own experiences. Recognizing how your life echoes broader cycles can deepen understanding, connecting your personal awareness to patterns that extend beyond the individual. Life is interconnected, and repetition often operates on multiple scales simultaneously. Awareness of patterns also encourages patience with yourself and others. When you notice the recurrence of certain dynamics, it is easy to judge or feel frustration. Yet recognizing repetition allows you to respond with compassion. Everyone is participating in cycles, some visible, some hidden. By observing your own patterns, you can develop empathy for the repetition in others. The awareness of shared rhythms fosters understanding and connection, turning recognition of repetition into a tool for harmonious engagement with the world. The mind often resists recognition of repetition because it challenges the illusion of linear progression. We like to think of life as a straight line, moving from one experience to the next, but the recurrence of patterns suggests a more complex structure. Life may not move strictly forward, it may fold back on itself, presenting familiar motifs in slightly altered forms. Awareness allows you to see this structure clearly, to navigate the loops with insight rather than confusion. Awareness also deepens self-knowledge. By observing recurring patterns, you gain insight into your own tendencies, strengths, and blind spots. You may notice repeated successes and failures, moments of joy and sorrow, and the ways you respond to both. This knowledge empowers you to act intentionally, transforming habitual reactions into conscious choices. Life becomes less about being swept along by unseen forces, and more about participating creatively in the unfolding pattern. Even the recognition of subtle synchronicities can be part of this awareness. Perhaps certain experiences coincide in meaningful ways, or opportunities appear that resonate with familiar themes. These moments are often dismissed as coincidence, yet they may be signals from the structure underlying your life, drawing attention to recurring motifs. By noticing these synchronicities, you cultivate attunement to patterns, strengthening awareness and opening space for conscious engagement. Awareness does not remove the challenges of life, it enhances engagement with them. Recognizing recurring patterns allows you to respond with insight, to act consciously within the loops of experience. The moment of recognition is itself transformative, providing perspective, clarity, and the opportunity to intervene in habitual cycles. Life is both familiar and new, and awareness bridges the gap, revealing the hidden architecture of experience while preserving the richness of spontaneity. Ultimately, awareness is both the key and the doorway. By noticing repetition, observing patterns in relationships, careers, habits, and emotions, you gain the power to act consciously. You begin to see where life presents echoes of past experiences, where choices repeat, and where responses can be transformed. Recognition turns repetition from something disorienting into something illuminating, offering insight into the rhythms of existence and the nature of consciousness itself. As you cultivate this awareness, life shifts subtly. Patterns that once seemed inevitable begin to change. Decisions that once felt repetitive acquire nuance. Emotional loops open into opportunities for understanding. The recurrence of familiar experiences becomes less a trap and more a guide, a structure that illuminates, teaches, and invites conscious participation. Awareness does not end repetition, but it transforms how you move within it, revealing freedom within the familiar and choice within the loops of existence. Memory is often thought of as a record of the past, a linear archive of events that happened and were stored in the brain. But what if memory is more than that? What if it is not merely confined to a single timeline or a single life, but is part of a larger continuum that transcends ordinary perception? The experiences that repeat, the emotions that echo, and the patterns that persist may all be informed by a form of memory far more expansive than we typically imagine. Some philosophers and scientists have speculated that memory could be non-local, that is, not tied exclusively to the brain or even the body. In this view, consciousness may store impressions of experiences in a subtle field, accessible under certain circumstances. Dejavu, intuition, and sudden familiarity might be glimpses into this broader memory, a recognition not of the present moment, but of a moment that has already occurred, whether in this life or another. The sense that something has happened before, even when logically impossible, becomes less mysterious when seen as a memory echo. Intuition is closely connected to this. That inexplicable feeling that guides decisions, alerts you to danger, or nudges you toward opportunity may not be random. It may be the subtle recognition of patterns your conscious mind has not yet fully integrated. Intuition often operates in the space where memory and perception intersect, providing signals of repeating dynamics, potential consequences, or hidden opportunities. In moments of calm attention, intuition becomes a compass, pointing toward understanding the underlying structure of experience. Time itself may not be as rigid as it feels. Modern physics suggests that the flow of time is relative, and that past, present, and future may coexist in ways that challenge ordinary perception. If time is more fluid than linear, then experiences could repeat not merely in cycles of habit or psychology, but in literal temporal patterns. The echoes of previous events might be woven into the present, accessible to consciousness in subtle ways. In this light, memory, intuition, and recognition are not anomalies. They are evidence of life existing within a complex temporal web. Some researchers suggest that consciousness may interact with time in ways that allow it to traverse different layers of reality. From this perspective, recurring experiences are not just coincidences. They are manifestations of consciousness moving through overlapping timelines. A decision you make today might resonate with a choice made in a parallel iteration, a similar circumstance, or a subtle variation of a past event. Intuition may sense this resonance, memory may recall it faintly, and déjà vu may bring it briefly into conscious awareness. The repetition is structural, woven into the flow of existence itself. Memory is not only about events, it is also about patterns. Emotions, reactions, and relational dynamics are stored in ways that influence future interactions. You might encounter similar circumstances repeatedly, but the core emotional or relational theme remains constant. A sense of abandonment, inadequacy, joy, or fulfillment may recur, shaped by the memory of prior experience. Recognizing these emotional echoes allows you to respond consciously, rather than unconsciously reenacting past reactions. Intuition is the bridge between subtle memory and conscious awareness. It operates without deliberate thought, often providing insight before reasoning catches up. That momentary feeling that a decision feels right or feels familiar may be your consciousness detecting the repetition beneath the surface. By paying attention to these signals, you begin to perceive the hidden architecture of life's cycles. Intuition is both a guide and a warning. It points to recurring patterns and suggests the ways you might navigate them differently. Recurring experiences often manifest in ways that are symbolic or metaphorical. Dreams, synchronicities, and fleeting insights are not always literal reflections of past events, but rather representations of the patterns underlying them. A dream about falling might reflect a recurring fear or failure. A chance encounter may resonate with past relationship dynamics. Subtle signs in your environment may echo previous lessons. Recognizing these symbolic repetitions deepens understanding, allowing you to interpret life's loops with nuance rather than fear. The interplay of memory, intuition, and time also offers a framework for understanding personal growth. If life repeats to present unresolved patterns, memory serves as the repository of those patterns, intuition signals them, and time allows multiple opportunities for engagement. By consciously observing, reflecting, and responding, you can intervene in the repetition, choosing new paths where previously only habitual loops existed. Awareness becomes the mechanism through which consciousness learns, grows, and evolves within recurring circumstances. Interestingly, memory and repetition are not always conscious. Much of the influence of previous experience operates below the level of awareness. A reaction, a preference, or a fear may emerge suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, because the memory of similar circumstances has been encoded in the fabric of consciousness. These unconscious echoes shape the choices we make, the people we are drawn to, and the challenges we encounter. By cultivating mindfulness, reflection, and self-awareness, these subtle influences can be recognized and integrated, transforming repetition into insight. Some people experience particularly vivid forms of recurrence, where memory seems to stretch beyond the ordinary timeline of life. Certain places, objects, or people may trigger intense familiarity, beyond what could be explained by experience in this lifetime alone. These experiences suggest that memory is not entirely bound by linear chronology, that consciousness may carry the imprint of events outside immediate perception. These impressions, subtle or vivid, form the threads of repeating patterns, offering opportunities for awareness and conscious engagement. Intuition also guides navigation through these complex layers. When faced with a repeating scenario, the instinctive sense of rightness or wrongness may reflect recognition of a prior occurrence. Acting in alignment with this intuitive guidance allows patterns to shift, transforming what might have been a habitual loop into an opportunity for deliberate choice. Intuition, in this sense, functions as a bridge between memory and conscious intervention, allowing the individual to navigate recurring experiences with insight. Time, memory, and consciousness may work together to create a form of natural feedback loop. Repeated experiences are not random. They are structured to reveal patterns, provide insight, and offer opportunities for transformation. By observing the echoes of past experience, attending to intuitive signals, and engaging with the present consciously, you can navigate these loops intentionally. Life then becomes not a series of random events, but a coherent system in which memory, intuition, and time interact to guide consciousness toward understanding and growth. Even small moments can carry profound insight when viewed through this lens. A fleeting emotion, a sudden sense of familiarity, or a recurring dream may be subtle signals of memory and time at work. These moments invite reflection, awareness, and conscious engagement. Ignoring them leaves repetition unconscious, but attending to them illuminates patterns, reveals lessons, and opens the door to transformation. Life becomes a series of invitations. Each repetition, each echo, each intuitive nudge is an opportunity to engage more deeply with the rhythm of existence. Memory is also cumulative. Each experience, each repetition, adds to a repository of understanding. The loops you encounter are not identical. Each iteration carries variations, nuances, and possibilities. Memory records the differences as well as the similarities, allowing consciousness to refine its responses over time. By attending to these subtle differences, you can discern the underlying patterns more clearly and engage with them consciously rather than unconsciously. The subtle dimensions of time may also explain why certain life events feel fated or predestined. A repeated encounter, a recurring challenge, or an emotional loop may appear inevitable because consciousness has already navigated similar circumstances before. The feeling of inevitability is not necessarily external. It may be the internal resonance of memory and awareness interacting across temporal layers. By observing these interactions, you gain insight into the deeper structures shaping experience. Intuition, memory, and subtle time awareness are not only tools for understanding repetition, they are instruments for transformation. Recognizing patterns allows you to choose new responses, alter habitual behaviors, and engage with life consciously. The echoes of past experience provide guidance, warning, and opportunity. Awareness is the key that unlocks the ability to move freely within the repeating structure of life, turning what might seem like inevitability into conscious choice. Finally, the combination of memory, intuition, and subtle time perception highlights the interconnectedness of all experiences. Recurring events, patterns, and emotional echoes are not isolated. They are part of a larger system in which consciousness, reality, and time interact. Recognizing these patterns connects you to a deeper understanding of yourself, your relationships, and the rhythm of existence. Life is not random repetition. It is a structured interplay of memory, awareness, and time, offering countless opportunities to observe, learn, and act consciously. By paying attention to memory echoes, intuitive signals, and subtle repetitions across time, you begin to see the hidden architecture of life. Repeating experiences are no longer mysterious or frustrating. They become guides, invitations, and mirrors. Conscious engagement with these patterns allows transformation, turning loops into lessons and repetition into insight. The more attuned you become, the more you navigate life with awareness, curiosity, and intentionality, discovering the freedom that exists within the recurring rhythms of existence. Even if life repeats in subtle or profound ways, there remains a question that strikes at the heart of our experience. What role does free will play in these cycles? If patterns recur, if relationships, challenges, and emotional loops echo previous experiences, are we merely enacting preordained scripts, or can conscious choice genuinely intervene? The answer may lie in understanding the delicate dance between repetition and awareness, between structure and agency. Patterns in life, however subtle, are not necessarily deterministic. They are more like a framework or a rhythm, providing a structure within which choices unfold. Imagine a spiral staircase. The shape is fixed, yet within each turn, there are countless possibilities for how you move, how you interact with others, and how you respond to circumstances. Repetition is not imprisonment, it is context. Within the cycles of recurring experiences, free will operates as the ability to respond consciously rather than unconsciously. Recognition is the first step toward exercising choice. When you notice that a pattern is repeating, you gain the opportunity to intervene. Perhaps you have encountered similar conflicts in relationships repeatedly, or the same career challenges continue to arise. By observing these repetitions, you can pause, reflect, and consider alternatives. You may choose to respond differently, break habitual emotional reactions, or approach a recurring situation with new perspective. Awareness transforms repetition from inevitability into opportunity. Even small choices carry weight within recurring patterns. A subtle shift in attitude, a new way of communicating, or a willingness to act with patience rather than frustration can alter the course of a loop. The universe may present similar circumstances repeatedly, but the conscious response to these circumstances is the domain of free will. Over time, these small interventions accumulate, gradually transforming the structure of experience itself. Choice is the lever by which awareness reshapes repetition. Consider relationships once again. When a recurring pattern emerges, perhaps repeated misunderstandings or conflicts, recognition allows you to act differently. Instead of reacting instinctively, you might respond with empathy, curiosity, or clarity. The dynamic may still be familiar, yet the conscious choice alters its trajectory. By acting intentionally, you break the unconscious loop and create space for new outcomes. Free will, exercised through awareness, reshapes the narrative of your life within the repeating framework. Choice also extends to internal dynamics. Emotional responses, habitual thought patterns, and recurring anxieties are part of the repetition of life. By observing these internal patterns, you can choose how to engage with them. Awareness allows reflection. Instead of being swept along by fear, frustration, or desire, you can respond with insight and intention. Internal repetition, once recognized, becomes a tool for conscious growth rather than a source of unconscious compulsion. Even when external circumstances seem fixed, free will operates within the response. A recurring challenge may arise, a difficult colleague, a financial hurdle, a pattern of social tension, but how you navigate it is a matter of choice. By observing patterns and considering alternatives, you exert influence over outcomes in ways that feel subtle but are profoundly effective. Repetition is a teacher, and choice is the instrument through which its lessons are realized. Life's repeated motifs are often opportunities to exercise this conscious intervention. A career obstacle may recur until approached differently. A relational tension may repeat until met with honesty, empathy, or courage. An emotional loop may return until it is confronted with awareness rather than denial. The repetition is not a trap. It is the universe presenting the same lesson until you fully grasp it. Free will allows conscious participation in this process, transforming recurrence into growth. Interestingly, the timing and context of repeated experiences may be influenced by prior choices. Some theories of consciousness and time suggest that decisions shape not only present circumstances, but also the manifestation of recurring patterns. Acting with awareness, then, is not merely about navigating familiar situations. It may influence which patterns recur, how they present themselves, and the opportunities available for transformation. Free will interacts with repetition dynamically, creating a feedback loop of awareness, choice, and altered experience. Even subtle interventions can ripple through recurring patterns. A change in response, an act of courage, or an expression of understanding may shift the emotional resonance of a situation, transforming how the loop manifests in the future. The power of choice lies not only in immediate outcomes, but in the long-term shaping of recurring experiences. Conscious action becomes a sculptor's hand, subtly reshaping the repeating structures of life. Patterns often repeat because lessons are incomplete or unresolved. Free will allows the conscious resolution of these lessons. A recurring relationship dynamic may be addressed differently when you exercise insight and empathy. A repeated career obstacle may be navigated with creativity or patience. A recurring emotional loop may be transformed through reflection, mindfulness, or new perspective. Choice allows you to complete the lesson embedded in repetition, dissolving the need for the pattern to recur. Even in the presence of unseen or subtle dimensions of time, free will operates. Recognition of déjà vu, intuition, or recurring emotional echoes provides the context for conscious engagement. While the structure of repetition may be influenced by prior experience or the deeper architecture of reality, the way you act within each recurrence is not predetermined. Free will exists as the active agent, the means through which consciousness exercises influence over patterns, shaping both internal and external experience. The practice of observing recurring patterns cultivates greater sensitivity to choice. By noticing emotional reactions, habitual behaviors, and relational dynamics, you gain insight into where intervention is possible. Repetition becomes a guide, not a prison. Life presents echoes, not to trap you, but to provide opportunities for conscious action. Each repetition is a prompt, asking, how will you respond this time? Will you act unconsciously or with awareness? Will the familiar loop continue or will it transform? Even choices that feel small can have significant impact within repeating structures. A moment of honesty, a shift in perspective, a decision to act with integrity, all can alter the trajectory of a familiar pattern. Free will does not always produce dramatic, immediate results, but over time, conscious responses accumulate, reshaping the loops of life in subtle yet profound ways. Awareness plus action equals transformation. Choice also interacts with responsibility. Recognizing recurring patterns requires accountability, not in a moralistic sense, but in the sense of ownership over one's responses. Life may present repeated challenges, yet how you engage with them reflects your consciousness. By taking responsibility for your reactions, emotions, and decisions, you exercise free will, even when external circumstances are repetitive or challenging. Responsibility transforms repetition into an opportunity for mastery and growth. Recurring experiences are also invitations to experiment with consciousness. If life presents the same emotional or relational pattern, you may consciously explore different responses. You might choose patience instead of frustration, courage instead of fear, empathy instead of judgment. Each conscious choice within a recurring pattern deepens understanding, expands insight, and gradually reshapes the familiar dynamic. Repetition becomes a laboratory for conscious evolution. Even when patterns are subtle, the exercise of choice matters. Emotional echoes, habitual tendencies, and recurring intuitions may seem minor, yet they form the texture of life's cycles. By acting consciously, you gradually shift the patterns at their core, creating freedom within repetition. The spiral of experience begins to open, revealing nuances and possibilities that were previously obscured by unconscious engagement. In this way, repetition and free will are not opposites. Repetition is structure. Free will is agency. Life provides the framework, and consciousness has the power to navigate it. Each cycle, each familiar dynamic, each recurring emotion is an opportunity to act consciously, to engage with awareness, and to reshape patterns that might otherwise continue unexamined. Awareness and choice are the tools through which repetition becomes insight rather than compulsion. Over time, the consistent exercise of conscious choice within recurring patterns leads to transformation. The loops of experience may still appear, but they change in quality, frequency, or intensity. Relationships, career challenges, and emotional cycles become malleable rather than fixed. The structure of repetition persists, but within it, freedom emerges. Life, once a series of familiar loops, becomes a canvas for conscious creation. Life often feels like a series of coincidences, random events that intersect and diverge in ways we cannot fully predict. Yet, for those attuned to patterns, these coincidences are rarely random. They are synchronistic, meaningful, and often uncanny, suggesting that unseen forces, subtle influences, or the deeper structure of consciousness may be at play. These external factors can shape the repetition of life, interacting with our choices, memory, and intuition to create experiences that feel familiar yet mysterious. Synchronicities are perhaps the most vivid sign of these unseen influences. You might think of them as meaningful coincidences, meeting someone unexpectedly who changes your life, hearing a phrase that resonates deeply with an ongoing situation, or encountering a place that triggers a profound sense of familiarity. These moments are not merely chance, they are signals, guiding your awareness toward patterns that may otherwise remain invisible. Synchronicity often highlights repetition, revealing the recurring dynamics that underlie your life. Unseen influences can operate subtly, shaping circumstances without overt control. A pattern may repeat because forces beyond ordinary perception are aligning events to bring attention to a lesson, a choice, or a relationship dynamic. These forces may not be intentional in the way humans think, but they create structure, resonance, and opportunity within recurring experiences. The sense that life pushes you into familiar situations may be less about fate and more about subtle alignment, a way for consciousness, or even the universe itself, to ensure that important lessons are encountered. Synchronicities often coincide with moments of heightened awareness. When your attention is focused, when intuition is strong, or when emotional resonance is high, recurring patterns become more visible. A chance encounter, a repeated phrase, or an unexpected alignment of events can feel like a message, pointing toward resolution or understanding. These synchronistic moments are like markers along a familiar path, guiding you through repetition with hints of insight and awareness. External influences may also manifest through relationships. Certain people appear in your life at recurring intervals, carrying the same emotional dynamics or challenges as earlier encounters. Friends, mentors, adversaries, or lovers may re-emerge in altered forms, presenting similar lessons with new context. These repetitions are rarely accidental. They often serve as mirrors, reflecting unresolved dynamics and inviting conscious engagement. Recognizing these patterns allows choice and awareness to interact with external guidance, transforming repetition into understanding. Even environmental cues can carry synchronistic weight. Places, objects, or situations may trigger memories, emotions, or intuitive insights that illuminate recurring patterns. A particular street, a piece of music, or a photograph may evoke a sensation of déjà vu or emotional resonance, signaling that the current experience is connected to prior iterations. These cues act as subtle reminders, weaving repetition into the fabric of reality and guiding awareness toward recognition and conscious response. Some spiritual and philosophical traditions suggest that these external influences are a form of guidance from consciousness itself or from a larger intelligence embedded within existence. The repeated presentation of lessons, relationships, and opportunities is not necessarily punitive, but instructive. The universe, in this view, operates like a teacher, arranging circumstances to highlight patterns until awareness is achieved. Synchronicities and unseen forces are not random. They are the scaffolding of learning and growth. The interplay between external forces and personal choice is delicate. While events may be structured, your responses remain flexible. Life presents opportunities repeatedly, but how you engage with them is a matter of conscious decision. Even when circumstances feel orchestrated, awareness and free will allow transformation. You may notice the same pattern emerging, recognize its significance, and choose a new response, thereby altering its expression. The unseen and the conscious work together, creating the dynamic dance of recurring experiences. Some patterns repeat more intensely because unresolved energy is attached to them. Emotional loops, unfinished conflicts, or unfulfilled desires act as magnets, drawing circumstances that resonate with the underlying energy. Unseen influences may amplify these patterns, ensuring that lessons are noticed and addressed. Synchronicities become signposts, pointing toward recognition and conscious engagement. The more attuned you are, the more these subtle forces become visible, guiding understanding without overt control. Timing often plays a critical role. Repeated experiences tend to appear when the individual is ready to perceive or address the underlying lesson. A recurring challenge may not emerge continuously, but at moments when awareness, intuition, and readiness align. Unseen forces, in this sense, are less about manipulation and more about resonance, presenting patterns at the optimal moment for recognition and conscious intervention. The universe, or consciousness itself, orchestrates timing to maximize awareness and growth. Even small interactions can carry synchronic significance. A passing conversation, a brief encounter, or a fleeting observation may reveal a repeating dynamic or hint at a recurring lesson. Life is abundant with subtle cues, designed to illuminate patterns without overwhelming awareness. Recognizing these cues requires attentiveness and reflection. By observing the external echoes of recurring patterns, you cultivate the ability to act with insight rather than habit. External forces also intersect with memory and intuition. A sense of familiarity triggered by a person, place, or event may be amplified by the unseen alignment of circumstances. Memory recalls the emotional or experiential pattern, intuition senses the resonance, and the external situation presents the opportunity for engagement. The recurring pattern emerges not purely from internal projection, but from the interaction between consciousness and external cues. Awareness allows conscious navigation within this interplay. Repetition, external guidance, and synchronicity are not limited to personal life. Some people notice repeating motifs in culture, history, or broader social dynamics. Certain challenges or opportunities appear collectively, suggesting that repetition operates on multiple levels. Personal awareness connects with these broader rhythms, allowing insight into how individual patterns relate to larger structures of experience. Life, in this sense, is a nested system of repeating dynamics, from the personal to the collective. The recognition of unseen influences can deepen the understanding of freedom and responsibility. While external forces may shape circumstances, they do not remove agency. Awareness allows conscious choice to interact with repetition, to respond creatively, and to shift habitual patterns. Even within orchestrated or guided circumstances, freedom exists in how one engages, interprets, and acts. Consciousness participates in the unfolding of repetition, co-creating the expression of patterns in partnership with subtle external forces. Sometimes synchronicities appear as confirmations of insight. A recurring thought, intuition, or emotional pattern may be validated by an external alignment, signaling that attention is focused on the correct thread. These confirmations encourage engagement, reflection, and conscious action, reinforcing awareness of patterns and the role of choice in shaping them. The interplay between internal recognition and external resonance becomes a feedback loop, guiding conscious navigation of repeating dynamics. External influences can also highlight unresolved aspects of life. A relationship, challenge, or opportunity may repeat until attention is paid to its underlying lesson. Synchronicities act as gentle or dramatic nudges, bringing recurring dynamics into view. These subtle alignments are not threats, they are invitations. Recognizing them allows conscious intervention, transforming repetition into understanding and growth. Even the uncanny feeling of déjà vu can be seen as the intersection of internal and external patterns. A familiar circumstance may be both a memory echo and a synchronistic alignment, revealing a recurring dynamic in a moment of heightened awareness. By observing these experiences without fear, you gain insight into the deeper structures of repetition, the interaction of consciousness with reality, and the subtle forces that guide recurring patterns. The recurring themes of life, relationships, challenges, emotional loops are rarely isolated. External forces, synchronicities, and subtle guidance operate alongside memory, intuition, and personal choice. Life presents a rich tapestry of repetition, woven with patterns that resonate across time and circumstance. Awareness allows conscious participation, free will allows transformation, and recognition of unseen influence provides guidance. Together, these elements illuminate the architecture of experience. Ultimately, unseen influences and synchronicities are not signs of predestination or control. They are tools. They reveal repetition, highlight patterns, and offer opportunities for engagement. By noticing them, reflecting on their significance, and acting with conscious choice, you navigate the cycles of life with insight. Repetition becomes a guide, synchronicity becomes a compass, and external forces become a subtle support for growth and understanding. Life, when viewed through this lens, is not random. It is structured, layered, and interconnected. Patterns recur, yet awareness and choice interact with external guidance to create opportunity, transformation, and insight. The unseen is not threatening. It is a subtle partner, shaping circumstances in ways that bring recurring lessons into view. Conscious engagement transforms repetition from a source of frustration into a path of clarity, understanding, and growth. Life rarely exists in isolation. Even when circumstances feel personal, the experiences we encounter are intertwined with the consciousness of others, creating complex networks of influence, resonance, and repetition. Relationships, communities, and even collective culture contribute to the cycles that seem to repeat in our lives. The patterns we experience are rarely purely individual. They are echoes of interconnected consciousness, reflecting dynamics that extend beyond the boundaries of a single self. Think of the people you encounter repeatedly. Friends, partners, colleagues, or even strangers who appear to return in familiar roles or emotional dynamics. These repetitions are often more than coincidence. Consciousness interacts subtly, creating relational loops that reflect both your internal patterns and those of the others involved. The repetition of dynamics, trust, conflict, attraction, misunderstanding, is co-created. Both parties bring histories, expectations, and unconscious tendencies to each encounter, and the pattern emerges from their interaction. On a deeper level, human consciousness appears to resonate with other minds. Empathy, intuition, and emotional mirroring connect individuals in ways that are often invisible but profoundly influential. When similar patterns repeat across relationships, it may be because consciousness itself is attuned to resonance. The lessons embedded in one loop may extend beyond a single individual, appearing across different people who reflect the same unresolved dynamics. Recurring life patterns are often social as well as personal, arising from the interconnected field of consciousness in which we exist. Collective dynamics amplify these patterns. Families, communities, and societies carry their own histories and tendencies, which influence individual repetition. Certain behaviors, beliefs, or relational roles are transmitted unconsciously, creating cycles that repeat across generations. Family conflicts, social expectations, and cultural patterns all serve as frameworks within which personal repetition unfolds. Recognizing the collective dimension of repetition helps contextualize experiences, showing that patterns are not always personal failings. They are echoes of larger systems. Even the unconscious mind participates in these networks. Psychological patterns, archetypes, and shared symbolic structures shape how individuals interact and respond to repeated situations. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of imagery, themes, and dynamics that transcends individual experience. Recurring patterns in your life may be manifestations of this collective structure, appearing through relationships, dreams, and emotional loops. Your personal repetition may be a thread in a vast tapestry of shared consciousness. The influence of others' consciousness also appears in subtle resonance. You may feel inexplicable tension, attraction, or familiarity with someone you have never met before. These sensations often indicate the presence of recurring relational dynamics. Perhaps the other person carries similar unresolved patterns, or your own consciousness recognizes a reflection of previous encounters. The repeated interaction is co-created, highlighting lessons or dynamics that require conscious attention. Awareness allows you to navigate these interactions intentionally, rather than unconsciously reenacting old patterns. Even larger societal patterns contribute to repetition. Economic cycles, cultural trends, and historical motifs create contexts in which individual experiences recur. Challenges that appear personal may in fact be manifestations of broader rhythms. The timing of career opportunities, social conflicts, or collective emotional trends often aligns with the recurrence of personal patterns. Conscious recognition of these connections situates individual repetition within a broader framework, revealing the interplay between self, others, and society. Technology and communication amplify these connections today. Social networks, digital communities, and virtual interactions create additional layers where consciousness intersects. Recurring experiences may manifest through repeated types of communication, conflicts, or social dynamics that are influenced by collective behavior. Patterns that once unfolded solely in face-to-face relationships now extend into the digital sphere, reflecting the same underlying dynamics on a new scale. Awareness of these influences allows navigation of recurring experiences with clarity. Relationships in particular serve as laboratories for understanding repetition. The dynamics that recur, attraction, avoidance, power struggles, or empathy, are co-created and reflected back by others' consciousness. By observing these relational loops, you gain insight into both your own patterns and the unconscious tendencies of those you interact with. This recognition allows conscious choice, offering the opportunity to shift responses and alter the course of repeating dynamics. Relationships reveal not only personal repetition, but also the interconnectedness of consciousness itself. The repetition of life may also involve unseen connections, subtle influences that extend beyond ordinary perception. Intuition often signals these connections, an unexplained sense of familiarity, a feeling that someone will appear, or a premonition of a recurring situation. These signals may arise from the interaction of multiple consciousnesses, resonating across time, space, or emotional patterns. Awareness of these connections enhances understanding of how repetition unfolds within networks of consciousness, offering guidance for conscious engagement. Even collective consciousness participates in shaping lessons embedded in repetition. Archetypes, cultural narratives, and shared emotional tendencies create patterns that repeat across time and individuals. The hero's journey, relational dynamics, and recurring moral dilemmas all appear in literature, myth, and everyday life, reflecting underlying structures that influence individual repetition. Recognizing these collective echoes allows personal insight, showing that your recurring experiences are not isolated anomalies, but part of broader patterns of human existence. Unresolved dynamics within others' consciousness can trigger recurring patterns in your life. For example, repeated conflicts with authority figures, partners, or peers may mirror unresolved tendencies in both you and the other person. By observing these dynamics, you can discern which aspects of the pattern arise from your own consciousness and which are reflections of external resonance. Conscious awareness allows you to engage with these loops intentionally, disrupting habitual cycles and fostering insight. Even fleeting interactions carry echoes of repetition. A brief encounter on the street, a casual conversation, or a moment of shared emotion may resonate with prior experiences, signaling the recurrence of relational or emotional patterns. These micro-patterns, though subtle, accumulate over time, forming a web of interconnected repetition. Conscious engagement with these moments transforms them from unnoticed loops into opportunities for insight, reflection, and choice. Recognition of interconnected consciousness also deepens empathy. When patterns repeat, they are rarely experienced by one person alone. Others involved in the loop are participating in dynamics shaped by their own consciousness, history, and patterns. Understanding repetition as a shared phenomenon fosters patience, compassion, and insight. The loops of life are not simply personal trials, they are manifestations of collective dynamics in which consciousness interacts across multiple levels. Even the most solitary experiences may carry echoes of other consciousnesses. A landscape, a crowd, or even a song may evoke the presence of repeating dynamics shaped by others' intentions, emotions, or attention. Subtle resonance connects individual perception to a larger network, creating repeated experiences that transcend personal agency alone. Recognizing these layers enhances awareness, allowing conscious navigation within the interwoven web of life. Recurring patterns in life, then, are rarely purely individual. They arise from the interplay of personal memory, intuition, choice, unseen forces, and the consciousness of others. Relationships, collective dynamics, and cultural frameworks create networks in which repetition emerges. Awareness allows recognition, insight allows conscious engagement, and choice allows transformation. The loops of life are simultaneously personal and collective, individual and interconnected, visible and subtle. By observing the influence of others' consciousness, you gain perspective on why certain experiences recur. The same type of challenge, relational dynamic, or emotional resonance may appear across different people and contexts, revealing patterns that extend beyond the self. Conscious engagement allows intervention, altering habitual responses and creating new trajectories within the recurring structure. Recognition of interconnectedness transforms repetition from isolation into understanding, from compulsion into insight. Even when repetition feels overwhelming, understanding the collective dimension can provide comfort and clarity. Patterns are not failures of the individual. They are part of a larger network, a web of consciousness in which learning, growth, and resonance unfold. Awareness allows participation in this network with intention, rather than unconscious reenactment. You begin to see life as a complex interplay of forces, choices, and connections, in which each loop offers an opportunity to engage consciously. As you begin to see the recurring patterns in life, the repeated relationships, emotional loops, career challenges, and synchronicities, a larger question emerges. Why does this repetition exist at all? Is it purely a consequence of psychology, memory, or collective dynamics? Or does life itself have a structure that repeats, echoing across time and consciousness in ways that suggest something profoundly deeper? To explore this, we must consider repetition from an existential and even cosmic perspective. From the standpoint of consciousness, repetition is not merely personal, it is structural. Life may operate within a framework that allows cycles, loops, and recurring motifs to emerge naturally. Time itself may not be a straight arrow, but a spiral, a loop, or a layered web in which experiences recur. These cycles provide opportunities for learning, reflection, and transformation. The repetition we notice is not a flaw or accident. It may be a necessary component of existence, a rhythm embedded into the fabric of reality. Consider the possibility that consciousness itself is fundamental to the universe. If awareness is not a byproduct of the brain, but a primary aspect of existence, then repetition could be an essential mechanism by which consciousness explores, tests, and refines experience. The cycles of life, repeated relationships, challenges, and opportunities become the way consciousness interacts with reality, perceives patterns and integrates understanding. Repetition, from this perspective, is a tool, a medium through which awareness evolves. Time loops offer another lens for understanding recurrence. Modern physics and certain metaphysical models suggest that time may not flow linearly, but may fold, loop, or layer in ways imperceptible to ordinary consciousness. Events that appear in the present may echo the past, resonate with parallel possibilities, or even prefigure future outcomes. In this framework, the feeling that life repeats is literal. The same structures, dilemmas, and lessons may recur in overlapping temporal layers, accessible to consciousness in subtle ways. Dejavu, intuition, and synchronicities can then be seen as glimpses into these loops, moments where awareness touches the underlying architecture of reality. Existentially, repetition is not punishment, it is opportunity. Life presents recurring challenges not to trap, but to teach. Emotional patterns, relational dynamics, and personal dilemmas are repeated until insight is achieved. Awareness allows recognition, choice allows intervention, and transformation occurs when the lesson is integrated. In this sense, the loops of life are invitations to observe, reflect, and act consciously, turning inevitability into possibility. Cosmic structures may also underlie repetition. The universe itself may operate according to patterns, rhythms, and cycles that manifest on both macro and micro scales. Planets orbit stars, stars cycle through life and death, galaxies rotate and evolve. On a personal scale, human experience may reflect these larger cosmic rhythms. Recurring life patterns could mirror the structural repetition inherent in the cosmos, aligning personal experience with universal order. Consciousness, being sensitive to these rhythms, participates in their unfolding, experiencing echoes of cosmic cycles in the texture of everyday life. Existential perspective also shifts how we interpret familiar challenges. When a relationship repeats or a career obstacle resurfaces, it may feel personal, limiting, or frustrating. Yet seen cosmically, repetition is not a reflection of individual failure, but of participation in a larger system of resonance, feedback, and evolution. Your recurring experiences are threads in a vast tapestry, each loop an essential pattern in the weave. Recognition of this broader structure fosters acceptance, awareness, and the capacity for deliberate engagement. Even our sense of self is implicated in these loops. The identity we carry, our habits, beliefs, and emotional tendencies, is both shaped by repetition and a participant in it. Conscious reflection allows observation of the self within these cycles, creating the possibility to transform habitual responses. The ego may resist, perceiving repetition as threat or limitation, but awareness invites a higher perspective. Each loop is an opportunity to refine understanding, expand consciousness, and engage creatively with the rhythm of existence. Time loops also suggest that past, present, and future are not strictly separate. Choices made now resonate across layers of experience, influencing future iterations of familiar patterns and even echoing backward in subtle ways. Memory, intuition, and the sense of déjà vu may reflect this complex temporal structure, giving consciousness glimpses into the repeating architecture of life. Awareness allows engagement with these loops, and free will allows the selection of responses that shape both immediate and extended patterns of experience. Cosmic repetition is mirrored in the human experience of synchronicity. Events that coincide meaningfully are not random. They are alignments within a web of consciousness, memory, choice, and cosmic structure. Repetition is often punctuated by these synchronistic moments, highlighting key lessons or choices. When a familiar situation appears unexpectedly, or a relationship dynamic mirrors an earlier one, the external world may be signaling a loop designed to be observed, understood, and transformed. These signals are both intimate and universal, linking personal experience to the broader order of existence. Existentially, repetition also fosters humility. Recognizing that life's loops extend beyond personal intent or understanding reminds us that consciousness participates in a larger system. Recurrent events are not judgments, they are mirrors. They reflect unresolved emotional patterns, unconscious tendencies, and connections to others, society, and even cosmic rhythms. Acceptance of this structure allows engagement without resistance, seeing repetition not as burden, but as guidance. Patterns repeat until resolution occurs. This principle operates at multiple levels: personal, relational, social, and cosmic. Emotional loops persist until insight is achieved. Relational dynamics recur until awareness shifts responses. Societal rhythms echo until collective consciousness evolves. Even cosmic structures operate through cycles. Stars form, die, and regenerate. Galaxies rotate and collapse, and universal laws create repeating patterns of matter and energy. Human experience mirrors this universal order, reflecting the repetition inherent in all existence. Recognition of these loops transforms the perception of life from chaotic to coherent. Familiar situations, recurring challenges, and repeated lessons are not arbitrary. They are signals embedded in the structure of reality. Conscious observation, reflection, and deliberate choice become instruments of engagement. The loops of life, rather than confining, open pathways for growth, understanding, and the evolution of consciousness. Even suffering, when viewed existentially, gains clarity. Pain, conflict, or failure often recurs because the underlying lesson has not yet been fully integrated. Repetition is a tool for refinement, allowing consciousness to confront and resolve unresolved aspects of itself. By observing patterns, acting consciously, and embracing the cycles of life, suffering transforms into insight, habit transforms into awareness, and repetition becomes a medium for evolution. Time, consciousness, and the cosmos interact in ways that suggest life is not random, but patterned. The loops we encounter, the recurring emotional and relational motifs, and the synchronicities that punctuate experience are all elements of this system. Awareness allows recognition, choice allows intervention, and repeated engagement leads to integration. Life's repetition, seen through this lens, is a dialogue between consciousness and existence, a feedback loop in which growth is possible, understanding deepens, and freedom emerges within structure. Ultimately, the repetition of life is both intimate and cosmic. It exists within personal consciousness, within relationships, within social and cultural frameworks, and within the larger architecture of the universe. Awareness allows observation of patterns. Intuition senses their resonance. Synchronicities highlight their presence, and free will provides the means for transformation. Repetition is not limitation, it is a medium through which consciousness explores, learns, and evolves. Existentially, this understanding reframes the recurring loops we encounter. They are neither punishment nor arbitrary fate. They are structures embedded in consciousness and reality, designed to bring awareness, offer choice, and provide opportunity for evolution. The cycles, echoes, and patterns of life are invitations to observe, reflect, and act consciously. They are threads in the universal tapestry, connecting personal experience to collective and cosmic dynamics. Recognition transforms repetition into clarity, insight, and freedom. The loops of life, when seen through this perspective, are not frustrating traps, but profound guides. They reveal the architecture of existence, the interplay of memory, consciousness, choice, and cosmic structure. They are mirrors, teachers, and opportunities for growth. Life repeats, not arbitrarily, but in alignment with the deeper rhythms of reality, offering insight for those willing to observe, reflect, and act with awareness. By now, the threads of repetition, memory, intuition, synchronicity, and cosmic structure are beginning to reveal a larger picture. Life, when viewed through these lenses, is not random. It is a complex interplay of patterns, loops, and cycles, some subtle, some unmistakable, that stretch from the personal to the universal. Each recurring experience, no matter how frustrating or familiar, carries the potential for understanding, growth, and transformation. The final question is not whether life repeats, but how you choose to navigate these cycles. Integration begins with awareness. To engage with repetition consciously, you must first observe it. Notice patterns in your emotions, relationships, decisions, and experiences. Pay attention to recurring themes in dreams, intuition, and synchronicities. Reflect on situations that feel familiar or unresolved. Awareness is not a passive state, it is active recognition. It is the first step toward transforming loops into opportunities, habitual responses into conscious choices, and unseen patterns into clarity. Reflection deepens this awareness. Observing repetition is not enough. You must also explore the meaning embedded in these cycles. Ask yourself why certain patterns persist. What unresolved emotions or unexamined beliefs are surfacing repeatedly? Which decisions or responses are habitual, and which arise from conscious choice? Reflection allows you to identify the lessons hidden within repetition, illuminating pathways toward integration and conscious evolution. Integration also involves aligning with your intuition. Intuition is a subtle compass that signals where recurring patterns may carry significance. It may manifest as a feeling of familiarity, a sense of impending opportunity, or a quiet warning. Listening to intuition allows you to act in harmony with the deeper rhythms of your life, bridging memory, awareness, and choice. By cultivating this inner guidance, you navigate recurring patterns with insight rather than habit, transforming loops into active engagement. Conscious intervention is the next step. Awareness and reflection alone do not change repetition. Choice is required. Once you recognize a recurring pattern, you have the opportunity to respond differently. In relationships, this may mean acting with empathy, honesty, or courage, where previously instinct led to habitual reactions. In personal challenges, it may mean experimenting with new approaches, embracing patience, or letting go of control. Each conscious choice reshapes the loop, gradually transforming the cycle into something new. Even subtle actions can have profound effects. A moment of awareness, a decision to pause before reacting, or a choice to engage differently can ripple across recurring patterns. Life often operates like a complex web. Small shifts influence multiple threads simultaneously. Repetition may still appear, but its quality changes. Over time, conscious engagement produces cumulative transformation, turning loops from sources of frustration into avenues for growth, creativity, and understanding. Integration also requires embracing the collective dimension of repetition. The loops we encounter are rarely isolated. They are intertwined with the consciousness of others, social dynamics, and even the broader rhythms of society and the cosmos. Recognizing the influence of these external and collective patterns fosters empathy, patience, and a deeper sense of connection. Awareness is enriched when you understand that your experiences resonate with a larger network of consciousness, providing insight into both personal and shared dimensions of repetition. Existential perspective enhances integration. Repetition is not punishment or random misfortune, it is structure. Loops provide multiple opportunities to practice, observe, and evolve. Challenges recur until the underlying lesson is fully integrated. Life's familiar motifs, emotional echoes, and synchronicities are invitations to engage consciously, refine understanding, and expand freedom. By embracing the cycles rather than resisting them, you discover a profound sense of alignment with the rhythms of existence. Even suffering gains new meaning through integration. Recurrent pain, frustration, or conflict often signals unresolved patterns that require conscious attention. Instead of perceiving these experiences as failures, view them as guides. Each loop offers insight into habitual tendencies, emotional reactions, and relational dynamics. By observing, reflecting, and acting with intention, suffering becomes a teacher. Repetition ceases to be oppressive and transforms into a tool for self-knowledge and conscious evolution. Integration also involves acceptance. Recognizing that life is patterned, that repetition exists, and that unseen forces, synchronicities, and collective dynamics are at play, fosters a sense of equanimity. Acceptance does not imply passivity. Rather, it allows conscious engagement without resistance. When repetition is understood as structure rather than chaos, awareness can operate without frustration. You begin to navigate familiar loops with clarity, creativity, and agency, rather than anxiety or confusion. Time loops and subtle dimensions of existence further enhance integration. By understanding that past, present, and future may coexist in ways that are perceptible to consciousness, you cultivate a flexible approach to repetition. Decisions made in the present resonate across multiple layers of experience. Memory, intuition, and subtle awareness become tools to navigate these loops. Conscious action transforms repetition into learning, allowing engagement with the full spectrum of temporal possibilities. Spiritual and philosophical perspectives also inform integration. Life's loops may reflect deeper truths: that consciousness is fundamental, that existence operates in cycles, and that the universe itself has structure. Recognizing these principles transforms how repetition is perceived. Patterns are no longer sources of frustration. They are expressions of a broader order in which lessons, opportunities, and growth unfold. Awareness, reflection, and choice allow participation in this structure, revealing freedom within apparent constraint. Practical integration includes observation, reflection, and intervention in daily life. Begin with subtle patterns, recurring thoughts, habitual emotional reactions, or familiar relational dynamics. Note when déjà vu, intuition, or synchronicity occurs. Reflect on their significance and consider conscious alternatives to habitual responses. Experiment with small shifts. Pause before reacting. Respond with curiosity. Choose empathy over judgment. Over time, these conscious interventions reshape repeating patterns, creating new trajectories within familiar loops. Integration also requires patience. Repetition persists until awareness and conscious choice have fully engaged the lesson embedded in the cycle. Transformation is gradual, cumulative, and often subtle. Small moments of recognition and intentional action accumulate, gradually altering the quality and frequency of recurring experiences. Life's loops are not instantaneously dissolved. They are gently reshaped through ongoing conscious participation. Freedom emerges through this integration. The loops of life, once unconscious and constraining, become transparent and malleable. Awareness illuminates the structure, reflection clarifies the lesson, intuition guides the path, and conscious choice shapes the outcome. What once felt inevitable now becomes navigable. Repetition, rather than a trap, becomes a canvas for creativity, insight, and the evolution of consciousness. Ultimately, integration transforms the perception of self. The ego, previously bound by habitual loops and reactive patterns, becomes a participant in a larger flow of consciousness. Identity shifts from being a passive receptor of repeated experiences to an active navigator of life's cycles. Consciousness learns to recognize familiar dynamics, intervene skillfully, and harmonize with the patterns that once seemed uncontrollable. The recurring motifs of life are now instruments for self-awareness and expansion. Even at the cosmic scale, integration is mirrored. Just as stars, planets, and galaxies follow cycles, consciousness participates in repeating structures across personal, relational, and universal levels. By aligning with these patterns consciously, you participate in the flow rather than resisting it. Life, once experienced as a series of frustrating loops, becomes an unfolding exploration, a dialogue between awareness and existence, and a journey of continuous learning and growth. Integration is both practical and philosophical. It is practical in daily observation, reflection, and conscious choice. It is philosophical in understanding the interplay of consciousness, time, memory, and cosmic rhythm. When these dimensions are recognized and harmonized, life's repetition becomes a mirror of both personal growth and universal order. Awareness, choice, and reflection transform cycles into insight, loops into guidance, and repetition into freedom. In the final reflection, consider the life you have experienced, the moments that felt eerily familiar, the emotional loops, the repeated opportunities and challenges. These are not accidents, they are signals, guides, and mirrors. By observing them consciously, reflecting on their meaning, and acting with intention, you engage fully with the recurring structures of life. Repetition is no longer something to endure. It becomes a medium for growth, understanding, and the conscious evolution of awareness. Life repeats, patterns echo, and synchronicities occur. Yet within these repetitions lies freedom. The freedom to observe, to understand, to choose, and to transform. The loops that once seemed limiting are now pathways. Awareness, reflection, intuition, and choice combine to navigate the cycles, revealing clarity within the familiar, insight within repetition, and evolution within recurring life patterns. In this way, the repetition of life ceases to be a mystery that confounds or constrains. It becomes a guide, a teacher, and a mirror. Each loop, whether emotional, relational, or situational, is an invitation to see more deeply, act more consciously, and live more freely. Life, with all its recurring motifs, is not merely experienced. It is understood, navigated, and ultimately transformed by the conscious mind.